and 23.
Amen.
Luke chapter 8, verse 22 and verse 20.
Come on, man. Come on. Deal with the water.
If you have it, say, I got it.
I got it.
It says, and now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship
Yeah.
with his disciples.
Yes, sir.
Let's go down to verse 23.
Come on.
Okay.
But as they sailed, he fell asleep.
My.
And there came down a storm of wind on the lake,
Yes, sir.
and they were filled with water
Yeah.
and were in jeopardy.
Lord, and
Come on.
Let's go back up to verse 22. It says, and it came to pass
Yeah.
on a certain day that he went into a ship
Yes, sir.
with his disciples.
What?
Just for a brief moment, my brothers and sisters, I want to talk on this subject, the God who is bigger than your storms. The God that is bigger than your storm. Just look at your neighbor and say, neighbor,
Neighbor.
no matter how big your storms may get,
No matter how big your storms may get,
God is bigger than all our storms.
your storms.
My brothers and sisters, in our text this morning, the disciples find themselves in a terrible storm.
All right.
Now, many times storms catch us when we're not expecting them. This was probably true for the disciples, my brothers and sisters, as this storm came even when Jesus was with them in the ship.
Well,
But in the story in Luke chapter 8, we see Jesus reveals himself as the God who is bigger than their storm.
well.
I think our view of God is very important to all of us. And because of how we view God will determine how we view ourselves.
Well.
And this morning, I'm sure that all of us know that God is bigger than our storms. Can I get a witness? But if you're like me, just you ought to have some confirmation every now and then. You may get down and out and you feel that when a storm comes in your life, you're wondering where did God go? You thought God had ran away from you, but God is just putting you in that storm just to see how you are going to make it through your trials and tribulations. But I just stopped by New Grace to tell somebody that God is bigger than your storms. You may be sick, but God will heal your body. You may have lost a loved one, but God will soothe your soul. My brothers and sisters, you may have lost a job, but God will give you a better job. Just know, my brothers and sisters, that God is bigger than all of our storms. God, somebody just shout God. God is bigger than all of our storms.
Yes.
And this morning, I'm sure one thing is for sure in this story is the storm was not as big to Jesus as it was to the disciples.
Come on, boy.
And even though the storm was above their head, it was still up under their feet.
That's it, boy.
See, some of you missed it. I rode the short bus sometime in school. Let me repeat that to you. Even though the storm was above their head, it was still up under their feet. I got a few principles that I want to leave you with New Grace by letting you know how God is bigger than our storms. The first thing that I want to let you know is that his intentions is bigger than our storms.
Right now.
His intentions. If you look at Luke chapter 8 verse 22, you can tell his intentions is bigger than our storms. Jesus had a plan. And what was that plan? It was for him and his disciples to make it over to the other side of the lake. Can I get a witness? That was God's plan. The disciples thought they were going to die on this ship. They thought they were going to die in this storm. God was sleeping ship.
Yeah.
God had already had a plan. You trying to figure out, the disciples are trying to figure out, Lord, why are you asleep in this storm? Why, Lord? You see this storm raging. You see this ship going from side to side. Why, Lord? Why are you asleep? And God was really not worried about him, because worried about the disciples is because God already had the storm come. He put the storm in the disciples' life because just to see how the disciples was going to react. We are, as human beings, have failed in our intentions. Have you ever determined to help someone one day, but when it was all said and done, you didn't help them at all? Have you ever set out to do a good deed and only end up not doing the good deed? Have we all failed in our intentions in our lives? But God has never failed his intentions. I just want to ask you a question this morning. When was the last time you failed God? When was the last time you failed God? Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 says, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Now, we may never go through a literal storm or a storm on the Sea of Galilee, but we all go through various storms in our lives. Your storm may be, Pastor Taylor, you lost your brother, and Sister Mother Taylor lost her son, but that was just simply a storm. He knew that you was going to have crying days. You knew you was going to have sorrow days, but he knew that you was going to make it through your storm. He knew you was going to cry at night. Sister Taylor, he knew you was going to cry at night. He knew you was going to miss your brother, but you are going to make it through your storm. Some of you might have had surgery in your life. You thought the doctor was going to give up on you. The doctor told you that there's nothing else they can do for you. But God, my brothers and sisters, has the last say so. God had already planned before you went into that surgery that you was going to make it out of the surgery. Young people, I know this is you, certain young people. You may have to have a test in your class, and can I get some more volume? You may have a test you got to study for, and you didn't know really what was on the test. You really didn't even pay attention in class, but when you took that test, you made an A on that test. Why? Because God was on your side. Can I get a witness here? Brothers and sisters, never give up on God, because God won't give up on you. Can I get a witness here? Not only, my brothers and sisters, his intentions was greater than our storms, but second of all, his interpretation is bigger than our storms. His interpretations is bigger than our storms. In Luke chapter 8 verse 23, it tells us Jesus is asleep in the storm, and evidently has been asleep for a long time. Isn't that strange? Jesus on this lake, on this river, on this ocean was asleep during a terrible storm. And his disciples was on this ship trying to figure out what in the world is wrong with Jesus. What is wrong with Jesus? He's sleepy. He sees this ship twirling from side to side, but his interpretations was bigger than this storm. And I wonder, do you see good when you have problems consuming you?
Come on now.
Do you sleep good? When problems consume you, you had hard times sleeping. But Jesus, my brothers and sisters, it didn't bother him on this ship because Jesus had already had a plan before this storm had ever happened. And I just stand by due grace to tell somebody, don't you give up. Don't you give up. Don't throw in the towel. Keep going to the finish line, because God, my brothers and sisters, your storm. The disciples, my brothers and sisters, interpreted this storm as something terrible. The fact is, they could not change their circumstances. They couldn't get out on the water and make it to dry land because they were in the middle of the ocean and this storm was raging and Jesus was sleeping. They were trying to figure out, Lord, will you help us? Lord, will you help us? But God was really not worried about them. But God was just trying to get a little rest. And the disciples were sitting on the ship worried. And I just stopped by New Grace to tell somebody, stop crying tonight. Stop staying up late at night trying to figure out, Lord, I need this done right now. I need it done. I've been in this situation a long time, but don't stay up all night. When it's time for you to go to bed, go to bed. God, my brothers and sisters, will take care of all of your situations and your storms. Can I get a witness? God sees the storm as a means of advancement. When you're in your storm, my brothers and sisters, all that is for an advancement. He put you in that storm just to see, can you make it to the next level? A lot of people, my brothers and sisters, I'm not talking about anyone here at New Grace, but a lot of people, when storms arise in their lives, they give up. A lot of people, my brothers and sisters, die in the midst of their storm. When our storm starts to rage in our lives, my brothers and sisters, don't do like the disciples did, start getting scared.
Come on now.
Just turn it over to Jesus. When you turn it over to Jesus, God will fix all of our storms out. My brothers and sisters, not only, my brothers and sisters, is his intentions and his inclination is bigger than our storm, but third of all, his inclination is bigger than our storm. His inclination. Well, the Bible says the ship was filled with water. I'm just going through the text. That's what Pastor Taylor teaches you every week. You got to go through the text in order to know what we're really talking about. Luke chapter 8, my brothers and sisters, verse 23 and 24 says, when the Bible says the ship was filled with water, it means they were losing out of control. They were losing out of control. It was getting out of control of the ship. The water was controlling the ship. Rather than the boat controlling the boat. Can I get a witness here? Let me repeat that. The storm was controlling the ship. Rather than the boat controlling the boat. That would have happened to a lot of us. Your storm is controlling your life. And the opposite of what that needs to do is God needs to control your storm. Once you get your storm situated with God, once you give it to God, don't keep worrying God about the same storm. The same storm that's been going on in your life 10 years ago. If you still bringing that up to God right now, it may not be God that's trying to do something about it. It just may be you. You may be the problem. God has done his thing. You still got that on your mind. 10 years ago, someone hurt your feelings 10 years ago. And every time you see them, you say, you remember 10 years ago, you did this and you did that. My brothers and sisters, it may just be something wrong with you. My brothers and sisters, Jesus arose. But not the way I would have arose on a ship with a storm raging like it was.
Come on now.
Have you ever been awakened suddenly and unexpectedly formed out of a deep sleep? You were asleep and all of a sudden you just woke up out of a deep sleep and you trying to figure out, Lord, what happened to me?
Come on now.
I'm about to give up. I had a bad dream in my life and I'm trying to figure out, Lord, why did you wake me up out of this wonderful sleep?
Yes, sir.
Our normal response, my brothers and sisters, would have been confused. We would have been confused and we've been rubbing the sand of our eyes to sleep. However, my brothers and sisters, Jesus didn't do that when he woke up on the ship. When Jesus arose on the ship, he didn't merely incline himself to the disciples. Can I get a witness here? His inclination, my brothers and sisters, I told you, his inclination is bigger than our storm. So not only, my brothers and sisters, but his inclination is to hear us. His inclination is to hear us. That's his natural. That's his nature. Immediately, Jesus inclined himself to the disciples. God never in such a deep sleep that he doesn't hear our faintest whisper. You don't have to yell at God, keep repeating yourself about the same situations, the same problems. Just tell him one time. If you give your God, if you tell the Lord your one problem, your situation, leave it alone. Pray about it, leave it alone, and don't keep bringing it up to God, because God will fix it right on time. He may not come when you want him to come, but he's always on time. And I just want you to look at your neighbor, if you don't mind. Just tell your neighbor, say, neighbor, don't keep worrying God about the same problem. One amazing thing that doctors have verified is that a mother often has a great special ear for their baby's cry. Mothers can often distinguish their baby's cry out of amongst a whole lot of children. What in the world, for me, as most men, one child's cry is the same as other children. Can I get a witness, man? You feel that one baby cry sound like all other babies cry, my brothers and sisters. Why? Because God made her a special ear to hear her baby's cry. What God did for a mother is she inclined to hear her baby.
That's it.
But the powers of comparison with God's ear for the cry of his children is, in Psalms 34:17, it says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears, and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to those who have broken hearts, and saves such as have contrite spirit.
That's it. That's it.
In your trouble, cry out to God. He's waiting on you. Not only, my brothers and sisters, is his inclination bigger than your storms, and his inclination, my brothers and sisters, his inclination is bigger than you can hear him. And not only his inclination is to help us. His inclination is to help us, and it is to hear us. Although Jesus was sleeping, I think the disciples misunderstood the nature of his sleep. They evidently thought that sleeping meant that he was unaware of their present danger, or that he was unconcerned for their personal lives. They thought Jesus didn't care anything about them dying on this ship.
Come on now.
And that's what some of you may feel about Jesus. When Jesus starts giving up on you and you think God has left you in your storm, God is not going to let you die unless you let yourself die in your storm.
Come on now.
Can I get a witness here, my brothers and sisters? But when Jesus was no less a God when we was asleep than when he was awake. Jesus was asleep on the ship. The ship was going from side to side, and the disciples were still trying to figure out, Lord, when are you going to wake up? The same way Jesus was when he was asleep was the same way as if he was wide awake with the disciples. Jesus was still going to let this storm arise in their life just to see how they were going to make it through their trials and tribulations. Psalms 34:19 says, many are the affliction of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. No matter how dark our lives may seem. We must believe the truth that his inclination is bigger than our storm. Not only, my brothers and sisters, is the God is bigger than our storms. Not only is his intentions bigger than our storms. Not only is his interpretation bigger than our storms. And not only is his inclination bigger than our storms. Not only, but last of all, I need to leave you here, New Grace, by letting you know that his intervention is bigger than our storm. I have used some eyes for you. His interpretation, his intervention, his inclination, his intervention is bigger than our storm. The disciples had seen our other miracles before, but notice what they said. What manner of man is this? The way he intervened was unreal. They were saying, it's not human. How can God just stop this water? How can God just stop this storm immediately? Let me ask you something, New Grace. If God can control the wind and the waves, don't you think he can control your storm?
That's not right.
If God can control the winds and the waves, don't you think as long as he's controlling the winds and the waves, he can control all of our storms all at the same time? Don't you give up.
Don't give up.
Don't you give up, New Grace. Don't throw in the towel. Just know that God will be right there beside you. I don't understand how God does it, but God can never even use the junk in our lives to bring glory to him. Can I get a witness here? Not only, my brothers and sisters, is his intervention bigger than our storms, but his instruction is bigger than our storm. The disciples learned something through the storm that they might not ever learn from anybody else. And they learned something about their faith. They knew that not only if they just keep their eyes stayed on Jesus, they knew that God was going to make it over to the other side. So I just stopped by New Grace to tell somebody, whatever you do, don't you give up in your storm. Can I get a witness here? Storms, I told you earlier, storms may just come for a little while, and storms may come for a mighty long time, but whatever you do, don't you give up on your storm. Good evening, New Grace. May the Lord God bless you real good. I can't leave you here, New Grace, without letting you all know about the one I'm talking about. His name, his name is Jesus. Can I get a witness here? Died one Friday, but early Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. Good evening, New Grace. But let me tell you one more thing. Weeping may endure for a night. The joy, anybody know joy will come in the morning. But let me borrow you one more time. Will you do me one favor? If you don't mind, will you just look at your neighbor? You don't even have to touch your neighbor, but at least can you look at your neighbor if you don't mind and say, neighbor, whatever you do, don't you give up on God, because God won't give up on you. God, people, let me tell you something. Keep your eyes stayed on Jesus. When you have down days, don't you give up on God. Keep going to school. Keep learning more. Go school to work. But while you're in school, don't forget Jesus. Never take Jesus out of your school. The government might have took Jesus out